Welcome back to Echoes of Insight. You know we love to go deep, and today we're diving into real estate.
Always a fascinating topic, right?
Absolutely. And especially because lately we've had a ton of you reaching out wanting to look at like the long view.
The long view.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like how has real estate changed in the last, say, 50 years? And how does that set us up for what's coming next?
Makes sense. With 2030 right around the corner, some folks are even calling it the singularity phase.
And you sent us so much to look at for this. Articles, old reports, historical data.
I even found some old brochures for those McMansions everyone was building in the 80s. Fascinating stuff.
Well, I think folks will be surprised to hear that American households actually owned a smaller share of real estate in the 90s.
Oh, definitely. And we'll have to unpack why. But first, let's rewind the clock, maybe go back to the 70s.
Okay, so bell bottoms, disco, and stagflation. What an era.
Right. High inflation, unemployment, housing affordability took a major hit.
So did anything good come out of that time, real estate-wise?
Well, it kind of forced people to think differently. We start to see the earliest ideas about energy-efficient homes.
Trying to keep costs down when energy prices are through the roof.
Exactly. And you can draw a straight line from that to today's focus on sustainable building.
Makes you wonder if those 70s homeowners ever pictured solar panels and smart thermostats.
Probably not. But then, boom, the 80s hit. It's like the whole mood flips.
Totally. Deregulation happens, and suddenly real estate's the hottest investment around.
Yeah, and it's all about bigger is better, McMansions everywhere. Remember those?
Oh, I remember. But you said something earlier that I got to come back to. American households owning less real estate during the 90s.
Yeah, that always trips people up. It's like the 90s seemed pretty stable, right?
They did it, so what happened?
Well, something else was exploding in the 90s. The dot-com boom.
Okay. So suddenly there are these new investment options. Tech stocks, everyone wants in on that.
Exactly. And compared to that, real estate felt, well, kind of boring.
So it wasn't that real estate itself was doing poorly. It's just that people's mindsets shifted.
Right. They saw these massive potential gains in tech and were less focused on the slow, steady growth of real estate.
Interesting. But of course, then we fast forward a bit and things get really rocky.
The 2008 crash, a lot of folks are still feeling those echoes.
I was just starting to think about buying a place then, and man, it was scary.
Totally understandable. That whole situation was a classic example of what happens when speculation takes over.
Right. And easy credit. It felt like everyone and their dog was getting a mortgage.
And not always the most responsible ones either. Subprime mortgages, predatory lending, it was a recipe for disaster.
And then you add securitization on top of that.
Bundling all those mortgages into these complex investments, yeah.
Spread the risk, they said. But in reality,
It made the whole system incredibly vulnerable. When the bubble burst, it was like a domino effect.
foreclosures everywhere, people losing their homes, their savings. The whole world felt it.
Definitely a stark reminder that even the safest investments can carry huge risks.
And understanding those risks is essential, especially as we try to navigate what's coming next.
Couldn't agree more. Which is why financial literacy is more important than ever. Understanding the market, knowing how to spot those risks.
Absolutely. Like having a superpower, right? The power to make smart decisions, even when everything feels uncertain.
I like that, the superpower of financial literacy. And speaking of things that can feel uncertain, let's talk about the elephant in the room.
Oh, you mean how technology is turning the real estate world upside down?
More like inside out. And it's not just the tech we have now, it's what's on the horizon.
Yeah, you sent over a bunch of articles about blockchain, AI, virtual reality. My head was spinning.
It is a lot to take in, but it's also incredibly exciting. I mean, this stuff has the potential to change not just how we buy and sell property, but how we live and interact with our homes entirely.
Okay, so break it down for us. Let's start with blockchain. A lot of people associated with cryptocurrency, right?
Right. But its potential uses in real estate are huge. Imagine a world where every property transaction is recorded on this secure digital ledger.
A ledger, like an old school accounting book.
Kind of. But this ledger is digital, tamper-proof, and completely transparent. No more shady deals, no more lost paperwork. Everything's out in the open.
Okay, I'm starting to see how that could be a game changer. But how would it actually work? Like, if I'm buying a house, what changes?
Instead of relying on title companies and piles of documents, you'd have this blockchain record that shows the entire history of the property. Every owner, every sale price, any liens, anything.
So no more surprises, no hidden problems that pop up after you've already signed the paper.
Exactly. It streamlines the process and makes it way more secure. And here's another cool thing. Fractional ownership.
I've heard that term thrown around. What exactly does it mean?
It means you can invest in a property without needing a ton of money up front. Think about it like this. You can buy a digital token that represents a small ownership stake in a building.
So instead of needing millions to buy an apartment building, you can buy a tiny piece of it.
Right. And as the building goes up in value, so does your token. It opens up investing to way more people.
That's pretty incredible. I can see how that could change the game.
And that's just scratching the surface of what blockchain can do. Property management, financing, even how we design and build homes, it can impact all of it.
Okay, my brain needs a break from blockchain for a sec. Let's move on to AI and virtual reality. Besides those cool 3D tours, what else is happening?
VR is going way beyond just tours. Imagine designing your dream home in a virtual space, trying out different layouts, finishes, even furniture.
So you can actually experience what it feels like to live in the space before it's even built.
Exactly. And it's not just for individual homes either. Picture using VR to explore different neighborhoods, even different cities. Imagine visiting potential homes in Paris or Tokyo from your living room.
Wow, that would definitely make relocation a lot easier. No more flying across the country just to look at houses.
And as we move toward this singularity phase, where technology is advancing so rapidly, these virtual experiences are going to become even more realistic. It makes you wonder what owning a home will even mean in the future.
Right. Like if you can have these amazing virtual spaces, why even bother with a physical one? I mean, I still love the idea of having my own little corner of the world, but
It's a question we'll all have to grapple with. And it's not just about technology, it's about what we value as humans. Will we still crave those tangible connections, or will virtual interactions be enough?
deep stuff.
Mm.
It makes you realize that the future of real estate isn't just about bricks and mortar.
It's about how we adapt, how our values evolve, and how technology reshapes our relationship with home itself.
And speaking of evolving values, we can't ignore the growing focus on sustainability, can we? It's not just a buzzword anymore, it feels like a core value.
Absolutely. And it makes sense. We're facing climate change, resource scarcity. Building sustainable homes is becoming a necessity, not just a nice to have.
What kind of innovations are you seeing on that front?
We're seeing it all. Tiny homes, eco-friendly buildings with passive solar design, rainwater harvesting, green roofs.
It's going back to the basics, but with a modern twist. Like, think about how indigenous cultures built their homes. Igloos, teepees, they worked with nature, not against it.
Exactly. And that's what we need to do now. Create homes that are beautiful, functional, but also sustainable and adaptable. Homes that can handle whatever the future throws at them.
Because let's be honest, that future feels pretty unpredictable. But there's one trend we keep hearing about that seems to be all about creating a more sustainable, tech-driven future. Smart cities.
Ah, yes, the smart city, the buzzword of the decade. But there's a lot of substance behind the hype, I promise.
Okay, I'm all ears. What exactly makes a city smart? Is it just about flying cars and robots?
Not quite yet, though I'm sure someone's working on that. The real focus is on using technology to improve the quality of life for residents.
Okay, so give me an example.
Think about smart grids that optimize energy consumption, integrated transportation systems that reduce traffic, sensors that monitor air quality.
So it's not just about fancy gadgets, it's about using data and technology to make cities more livable.
Exactly. And that has huge implications for real estate. People are willing to pay more to live in a city that's seen as innovative and forward-thinking.
So it's like a cycle. The city invests in smart tech, which attracts residents, which drives up property values, which leads to more investment.
Right. It's a win-win. But with all this focus on urban areas, I know some folks are wondering, what about rural living? Is that going to disappear in a world of smart cities?
You're listening to Echoes of Insight, where we dive deep into the topics shaping our world, from the planet and politics to health, consciousness, economy, and alternative lifestyles. If you're enjoying the journey, make sure to subscribe and share this podcast with others who love exploring new perspectives.
I'm definitely curious about that. I mean, with remote work becoming so common, it feels like you can live anywhere these days.
And that's exactly why rural communities are becoming more and more appealing. People want peace, space, affordability, and they can have that without sacrificing their careers.
But there are challenges too, right? Like internet access isn't always great in rural areas. And what about things like schools and hospitals?
You're right, there are trade-offs. It's important to weigh those pros and cons carefully. But for the right person, rural living can be an amazing option.
And for those who want the best of both worlds, community and sustainability, but still close to a city, there's always co-living.
Co-living is a fascinating trend. It's all about shared resources, community, and a more sustainable way of life.
It's not just about sharing a kitchen, right?
Right. It's about creating a micro-community. Think communal gardens, renewable energy, shared workspaces.
It's like a modern take on a traditional village. And as we move towards this singularity phase, that sense of community feels more important than ever.
I agree, because the singularity isn't just about technology, it's about how we adapt as humans. And that adaptation requires emotional intelligence, resilience, and yes, strong communities.
So it's not just about knowing how to invest in real estate or use the latest tech. It's about knowing how to navigate a world that's changing at lightning speed.
Precisely. And that's why we're doing this deep dive. It's about giving you the knowledge and tools to not just survive in this crazy world, but to thrive.
To create a future that aligns with your values and your vision of what home really means.
It's almost like we're building a bridge,
Yeah.
from these big sweeping trends to the actual decisions people are making about where and how they want to live.
And that's what a lot of our listeners are struggling with, right? Like, we've thrown out all these ideas, but how do you actually apply this stuff? Where do you even start?
Well, I always tell folks to start with themselves. Like, what do you actually value in a home? Is it location? Is it being near nature, a strong sense of community, or maybe minimizing your environmental impact?
It's almost like making a checklist, but for your values.
Exactly. And once you've got that checklist, then you can start looking at the options that fit. Do those shiny smart cities appeal to you, or are you more drawn to a quieter life, maybe out in a rural area?
Or maybe it's a mix, right? Like some of those co-living spaces we talked about. Urban setting, but with that community focus and eco-conscious design.
Right. There's no one-size-fits-all answer here. It's about finding that sweet spot where your values line up with what the market's offering. But here's the thing, that market is constantly changing.
Oh yeah, no doubt about that.
So the choices we make today, they don't just affect us personally, they ripple outward and shape the future of real estate as a whole. It's kind of like
A butterfly effect. One little flap of your wings can cause a hurricane on the other side of the world.
exactly. So even if you think, well, my little decision doesn't matter that much, it really does add to that collective momentum.
So it's not just about finding the perfect place for you. It's about contributing to a future that you actually want to live in.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And, looking at all this, it's clear we're on the edge of something big. I mean, blockchain's changing how we own property, AI's changing how we find it and manage it.
And VR is making it so you can practically step inside a house on the other side of the planet without leaving your couch. It's going to be wild.
Yeah, the possibilities are pretty much endless at this point. But with that much potential comes, well, responsibility.
You mean like making sure we're using all this new tech in a way that actually benefits people?
Exactly. Don't just jump on the latest trend because it sounds cool. Do your research, ask the tough questions, and think about the long-term impact.
So informed, engaged, and intentional. I like that.
Because at the end of the day, this future we're talking about, it's not some pre-programmed thing. We're all building it together, one choice at a time.
Powerful stuff. So as we wrap up this deep dive, any final thoughts for our listeners?
Just a few key things to remember. One, the past can teach us a lot. Look for those echoes, those patterns. They can help us anticipate what's coming next. Two, tech is a tool. Use it wisely. Don't be afraid of it, but don't let it control you either. And finally,
remember that this future of real estate, it's not set in stone.
it's a story that's still being written, and you get to be a part of it.
So be proactive, be curious, and don't be afraid to explore those possibilities. Who knows, you might just create something amazing. Thanks for joining us on Echoes of Insight.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Echoes of Insight. If you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and share it with someone who loves exploring big ideas. Together, let's keep the conversation going. See you next time.